The rain pounded the cracked pavement of Willow Creek, a sleepy Oregon town where secrets festered like weeds. Ethan Carver stood frozen, staring at the gravestone that bore his twin brother's name, Ezra Carver, 1988-2025. He hadn't cried not yet, but the weight of his own cruelty choked him more than the storm ever could. They'd been inseparable once. Ethan and Ezra, two halves of a whole. Born minutes apart. They shared everything: freckled cheeks, hazel eyes, a love for late-night stargazing in their backyard. But as they grew, Ethan turned sharp, his words cutting like glass, while Ezra's softness became his strength. By high school, Ethan was the golden boy quarterback, prom king, the one everyone adored. Ezra, though, was different. He wore his heart openly, loved fiercely, and came out as gay at 16. Ethan, desperate to fit in, mocked him relentlessly, calling him freak in front of their friends, laughing as Ezra's eyes dimmed with each jab. It was easier to push him away than to face the truth. Ethan envied Ezra's courage. Now, Ezra was gone. A car accident, sudden and cruel, had stolen him 3 weeks ago. Ethan hadn't spoken to him in years. Not since their last fight, when Ezra begged him to stop the hate. "You're my brother," Ezra had said, voice breaking. "Why can't you just love me?" Ethan had laughed, cruel and dismissive, and walked away. That was the last time he saw Ezra alive. The funeral was a blur of black umbrellas and whispered condolences. Ethan stood apart, unable to meet the eyes of Ezra's partner, Julian, who cradled a 5-year-old girl in his arms. Her name was Lily, Ezra's adopted daughter, with curls as wild as her father's spirit. Julian's grief was raw, his dark eyes hollow, but he held Lily like she was his anchor. Ethan avoided them, guilt gnawing at his gut. He hadn't known Ezra had a daughter. He hadn't known anything about his brother's life. Back at his apartment, Ethan poured whiskey into a chipped glass, the amber liquid trembling in his hands. Photos of him and Ezra as kids cluttered the shelves, smiling, gap-toothed, carefree. He hadn't looked at them in years. Now, they felt like accusations. His phone buzzed. A message from his mother, Julian, struggling. "Lily needs family. You're her only blood relative." Ethan's stomach twisted. He wasn't family, not after what he'd done. But the thought of Lily, alone without Ezra, sparked something he couldn't name. The next morning, Ethan drove to Julian's small house on the edge of town. The yard was overgrown, the porch sagging under the weight of neglect. Julian opened the door, his face a mix of exhaustion and distrust. "What do you want?" he asked, voice clipped. "I want to help," Ethan said, the words clumsy. "With Lily." Julian laughed, bitter and sharp. "You, the guy who made Ezra's life hell. You don't get to play hero now." "I know I messed up," Ethan said, his voice low. "But she's my niece. I'm all she's got left of him." Julian's eyes narrowed. "You don't know her. You didn't know him." Ethan swallowed the urge to argue. He deserved this. "Let me try," he said. "Please." Julian stared at him for a long moment, then stepped aside. Inside, Lily sat on the floor, coloring a picture of a rainbow. She looked up, her eyes so like Ezra's that Ethan's breath caught. "Are you my uncle?" she asked. her voice small but curious. Yeah, Ethan said, kneeling. I'm Ethan. She tilted her head, studying him. Daddy said you were mean to him. The words hit like a punch. Ethan glanced at Julian, who didn't flinch. I was. Ethan admitted. I was wrong. I want to be better. Lily nodded, as if it were that simple, and handed him a crayon. Draw with me. Over the next few days, Ethan visited daily. Julian watched him like a hawk, but Lily's warmth began to crack the walls between them. She told Ethan stories about Ezra, how he'd sing her to sleep, how he'd dance with Julian in the kitchen. Each story was a knife, carving out the truth of how much Ethan had missed. He learned Ezra had fought for years to adopt Lily, navigating a system that didn't always welcome gay couples. He'd been a father, a partner, a man who loved without fear. And Ethan had thrown it all away. One night, Julian found Ethan sitting on the porch, staring at the stars. Why now? Julian asked, his voice softer but still edged with pain. Why do you care about Lily? Because I failed him, Ethan said, his voice breaking. I can't bring Ezra back, but I can make sure she knows who he was. Julian didn't respond, but he sat beside Ethan, the silence heavy with unspoken grief. For the first time, Ethan felt a flicker of hope, not forgiveness. Not yet, but a chance to start. Weeks passed, and Ethan's visits to Julian's house became a fragile routine. Lily greeted him with shy smiles, her small hands tugging him toward her toys or drawings. But Julian remained a fortress, his guarded glances a reminder of the chasm Ethan had created. Ethan didn't push. He knew he had no right to. Instead, he showed up, day after day, learning the rhythm of Lily's world, her love for strawberry pancakes, her habit of hiding crayons under the couch, her quiet questions about Ezra. Does Daddy see me from heaven? She asked once, her voice trembling. Ethan, unprepared, mumbled something about stars watching over her, hating how hollow it sounded. Willow Creek buzzed with gossip. The town hadn't changed much since Ethan and Ezra were kids' same diners, same narrow minds. People whispered about Ezra's choice, as if his love for Julian was a scandal rather than a life. Ethan overheard it at the gas station, the market, the bar where he used to drink with his old football buddies. Shame about Ezra, they'd say, shaking their heads. Good guy. But, you know, Ethan's fists clenched. But he stayed silent. He'd been one of them once, tossing slurs like they were nothing. Now, each word felt like a debt he could never repay. At Julian's, Ethan noticed the strain. Bills piled up on the kitchen counter, unopened. Julian worked late shifts at the hospital, his face etched with exhaustion. Lily's daycare costs were bleeding him dry, and the house Ezra's pride was falling apart. Ethan offered to help financially, but Julian shut him down. We don't need your pity, he snapped. Ethan didn't argue, but he started fixing things quietly, a leaky faucet, a creaky step, small acts he hoped might speak louder than words. One afternoon, while Julian was at work, Ethan took Lily to the park. She ran ahead, her laughter cutting through the autumn chill. Ethan watched, marveling at how much she resembled Ezra, not just her eyes, but her fearless joy. A group of kids played nearby, their parents chatting on benches. One woman, recognizing Ethan, approached. "You're Ezra's brother, right?" she asked, her tone sugary but sharp. "Didn't know you were involved now." The implication stung that Ethan, the normal twin, was slumming it with his brother's lifestyle. He forced a smile, said nothing, and turned back to Lily. But the encounter lingered, a reminder of the town's judgment. That evening, Julian came home to find Ethan and Lily baking cookies, flour dusting their faces. For a moment, Julian's guard dropped, a faint smile breaking through. "Ezra used to make a mess like this," he said, almost to himself. Ethan seized the opening. "Tell me about him," he said. "What was he like with you?" Julian hesitated, then spoke. He described Ezra's quiet strength, his stubborn optimism, the way he'd fight for what mattered. "He never gave up on you," Julian said, his voice tight. "Even when you hurt him, he believed you'd come around." Ethan's throat burned. He wanted to apologize, to beg forgiveness, but the words felt too small. The next day, Ethan found a box of Ezra's things in the garage old journals. Photos, a worn leather bracelet. He sat on the cold floor, flipping through pages of Ezra's neat handwriting. One entry, dated a year ago, stopped him cold. Ethan's still out there, lost in his own head. "I pray he finds peace before it's too late." Ethan's vision blurred. He'd spent years building walls, thinking they protected him. Now, he saw they'd only trapped him. Lily's birthday was approaching, and Ethan wanted to make it special. He suggested a small party, but Julian was skeptical. "She's been through too much," he said. "She needs stability, not surprises." Ethan pushed gently, promising to keep it simple. They settled on a picnic in the backyard, just the three of them. Ethan spent hours decorating with fairy lights and balloons, Lily's favorite colors. When she saw it, her face lit up, and for the first time, Julian didn't look at Ethan with suspicion. They sang to Lily, ate cake, and watched her chase fireflies as dusk fell. For a moment, it felt like a family. But the peace was fragile. That night, Julian got a call from the hospital. Budget cuts meant his hours were slashed. He didn't tell Ethan, but Lily mentioned it the next day, her voice small. Julian sat again. She said. Ethan's resolve hardened. He couldn't replace Ezra, but he could step up. He went to Julian, offering to take Lily during the day so Julian could job hunt. Julian resisted, pride warring with desperation, but finally agreed. "Don't screw this up," he said, his eyes a mix of hope and fear. As Ethan tucked Lily into bed that night, she whispered, "I miss Daddy." Ethan hugged her, his heart aching. "Me too," he said. "But we'll keep him with us. Okay." For the first time, he felt like he might belong in her world and Ezra's. Winter crept into Willow Creek, frosting the windows of Julian's house and tightening the grip of grief. Ethan's days with Lily grew steadier, a rhythm of school drop-offs, story time, and clumsy attempts at braiding her hair. She laughed more now, her trust in him a fragile gift. But Julian's walls remained, his silences heavy with the weight of Ezra's absence. Ethan felt that every moment with Lily was a reminder of the brother he'd failed. One morning, Ethan found a letter tucked in Ezra's journal, addressed to him. The date was 2 years old, written after their last fight. "Ethan, I don't hate you. It began. I wish you'd see men at the labels. Not the town's whispers. Just me. You're my twin. My other half. I'll always love you. Ethan's hands shook as he read it. He'd been too stubborn. Too scared to face his own flaws. Now, it was too late to tell Ezra he was sorry. At Lily's school, Ethan noticed the stares. Parents whispered when he picked her up, their eyes flicking between him and Lily. Ezra's kid. They'd murmur, as if she were a curiosity. One day, a man Ethan recognized from high school, Mike. A former teammate cornered him in the parking lot. Didn't peg you for the type to play dad to. Well, you know, Mike said, smirking. Ethan's temper flared, but he thought of Lily waiting inside. She's my niece, he said coldly. That's all you need to know. Mike shrugged and walked away, but the encounter left Ethan rattled. He'd been Mike once, tossing careless words. Now, he saw their damage. Julian's job situation worsened. The hospital offered him part-time work, but it wasn't enough. Ethan overheard him on the phone, pleading with a landlord about late rent. Desperate to help, Ethan offered to pay a month's worth, pulling from his savings as a mechanic. Julian's face hardened. I don't need your charity, he said, but his voice cracked. Ethan pressed. It's not charity. It's for Lily. After a tense silence, Julian nodded, but the air between them grew colder. Lily, though, was a bridge. She drew pictures for Ethan. Stick figures labeled Uncle E and Daddy J, holding hands with her. One evening, she asked Ethan to read her Ezra's favorite book, a worn copy of The Velveteen Rabbit. As he read about love making things real, his voice faltered. Julian, listening from the doorway, looked away, but not before Ethan saw the tears in his eyes. Later, Julian admitted, Ezra read that to her every night. He said it reminded him of us, you and me, how we used to be. Ethan seized the moment. I want to know him. Julian. Not just the brother I pushed away, but the man you loved. Julian's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Over coffee, he shared stories, Ezra's quiet activism, his dreams of opening a community center for queer youth, his fierce love for Lily. Each word painted a picture of a life Ethan had refused to see. He never stopped hoping you'd come back, Julian said. It broke his heart, but he believed in you. The holidays loomed, and Ethan wanted to give Lily a Christmas to remember. He suggested a tree, decorations, a real celebration. Julian hesitated. Last Christmas had been with Ezra, but Lily's excitement won him over. They drove to a lot outside town, Lily bouncing between them as they picked a lopsided pine. Back home, they strung lights and hung ornaments, Lily giggling as Ethan lifted her to place the star. For a moment, grief paused, and the house felt alive again. But tension simmered. At a town holiday fair, Ethan and Lily ran into Mike and his buddies. Raising Ezra's kid now. Mike jeered. Guess you're one of them now. Ethan's blood boiled, but Lily's hand in his kept him grounded. Let's go, kiddo, he said, walking away. Later, he told Julian, expecting anger. But Julian just sighed. That's what Ezra dealt with every day, he said. You're just starting to get it. Ethan's guilt deepened, but so did his resolve. He started researching Ezra's dream, the community center. He found old plans in Ezra's journals. Sketches of a safe space for kids like Lily. For people like Ezra. Ethan didn't know if he could make it real. But he wanted to try. For Ezra. For Lily. For himself. As snow fell, Ethan tucked Lily into bed, her small hand clutching his. "You're staying, right?" she asked. Ethan nodded, his heart full. "I'm not going anywhere," he promised. For the first time, he believed it. January's chill settled over Willow Creek, mirroring the unease in Julian's home. Ethan's presence was a constant now, woven into Lily's routines. But the air between him and Julian crackled with unspoken truths. Ethan wanted to prove he'd changed. But Julian's guarded heart wasn't ready to trust. Each step forward felt like a tightrope walk over a canyon of regret. Lily, oblivious to the tension, thrived. She dragged Ethan to her school's winter play, where she played a snowflake, twirling in a sparkly costume. Ethan cheered louder than anyone, his pride fierce and unfamiliar. But afterward, a parent's comment, "Didn't know Ezra's brother was so involved," stung like a slap. Ethan brushed it off for Lily's sake. But the words echoed his own doubts. Was he doing this for her? Or to ease his guilt? At home, Ethan found Ezra's old sketchbook, filled with designs for the community center. Notes in the margins spoke of a haven for queer kids, a place where they'd feel safe. Ethan felt a spark. This could be his redemption, a way to honor Ezra. He showed the sketches to Julian, expecting resistance. But Julian's eyes softened. "He talked about this all the time," he said. "Never had the money, though." Ethan hesitated, then said, "What if we tried?" For him. Julian didn't answer. But the silence wasn't hostile. It was a start. Ethan threw himself into research, contacting local nonprofits and studying grant applications. He was out of his depth a mechanic. Not a fundraiser, but the idea consumed him. He spent nights poring over Ezra's notes, piecing together his brother's dream. Lily noticed, asking, "Are you making Daddy's place?" Ethan smiled, ruffling her hair. "Trying to, kiddo." Her faith in him was a lifeline. But the town's undercurrent of prejudice persisted. At a diner, Ethan overheard a group of old classmates mocking Ezra's lifestyle and questioning Lily's upbringing. "Two dads. Now this guy," one said. Ethan's fists clenched, but he thought of Ezra's patience and stayed quiet. Later, he asked Julian how he'd dealt with it. Julian shrugged, his voice tired. "You ignore it. Or you fight." Ezra chose to fight by living openly. "Me? I just survive." The weight of Julian's words hit hard. Ethan realized he'd never truly understood the cost of Ezra's courage. He started noticing the small things: how Julian tensed when they passed certain neighbors, how Lily clung to him in crowds. Ethan wanted to shield them, but he was still learning what that meant. One evening, Julian came home to find Ethan and Lily building a fort out of blankets. Lily's laughter filled the room, and for a moment, Julian's face softened. "You're good with her," he admitted, almost reluctantly. Ethan seized the chance. "I want to be here, Julian. Not just for now, for good." Julian's eyes searched his, wary but curious. "Why?" he asked. Ethan took a breath. "Because I owe Ezra everything. And because she's family." The next day, Ethan attended a town council meeting, pitching the community center idea. He stumbled over his words, unprepared for the skeptical faces. "This is for kids who need a safe place," he said, his voice gaining strength. "For people like my brother." The room went quiet. Some nodded. Others smirked. The council promised to consider it. But Ethan left feeling exposed, like he'd bared his soul to a room of strangers. Back at Julian's, a fight erupted. Julian had heard about the meeting and was furious. "You don't get to use Ezra's name like that," he snapped. "Not when you spent years tearing him down." Ethan's temper flared. "I'm trying to make it right," he shouted. Lily, hearing the yelling, ran to her room. The sound of her door slamming silenced them both. Julian's voice dropped. "You don't fix a lifetime of hurt with one speech." Ethan left, the fight replaying in his head. He drove to the cemetery, standing before Ezra's grave. "I'm trying. Easy," he whispered. "But I don't know if it's enough." The wind carried no answers. But Ethan felt a shift. He couldn't undo the past, but he could fight for the future. He returned the next morning, determined. Julian was in the kitchen, looking drained. "I'm sorry," Ethan said. "I'll do better. For her. For you." Julian didn't respond, but he didn't turn away either. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something. Ethan held on to it, vowing to keep going. Spring brought tentative warmth to Willow Creek, but the chill between Ethan and Julian lingered. Lily, however, was a burst of light. Her 6th birthday just weeks away. Ethan wanted to make it unforgettable, a way to honor Ezra's love for her. He suggested a party at the park, with games and a rainbow-themed cake, Ezra's favorite colors. Julian agreed, but his eyes held a warning: "Don't mess this up." Ethan threw himself into planning, enlisting help from a few of Ezra's old friends who'd stayed in touch with Julian. They were wary of Ethan at first, their loyalty to Ezra clear. But Lily's excitement softened them. "She's just like him," one friend, Mara, said, watching Lily skip around the yard. Ethan nodded, his throat tight. "I know." He felt Ezra in every laugh, every fearless twirl, and it drove him to keep going. The community center project gained traction. Ethan secured a meeting with a local foundation, pitching Ezra's vision with a passion he didn't know he had. The foundation was intrigued but cautious, requesting a detailed proposal. Ethan spent nights at Julian's kitchen table, drafting plans, his mechanic's hands clumsy with a pen. Julian watched, silent but curious. One night, he slid a coffee mug toward Ethan. Ezra would have been proud, he said quietly. Ethan's heart leapt, but he only nodded, afraid to break the moment. At Lily's school, trouble brewed. A parent complained about her unconventional family, questioning Ethan's role. The principal, a kind but spineless man, called Julian and Ethan for a meeting. "Some folks are concerned," he said, avoiding their eyes. "They think Lily's situation is confusing." Julian's face was stone, but his voice was ice. "Her situation is she lost her father. Ethan's her uncle." "What's confusing?" Ethan, usually quick to anger, stayed calm for Julian's sake. "She's loved," he said. "That's what matters." The principal backed off, but the incident left Ethan shaken. He'd faced prejudice before, but now it felt personal. Lily's birthday arrived. A sunny day that felt like a gift. The park buzzed with kids, Ezra's friends, and even a few curious neighbors. Ethan manned the games, his laughter mingling with Lily's as she raced through an obstacle course. Julian watched from a picnic table, his guard lower than usual. When Lily cut her cake, rainbow layers spilling out, she squealed and hugged Ethan. Then Julian. For a moment, they were a unit, bound by her joy. But the peace shattered that night. Julian got a letter from social services. Someone had filed a complaint, questioning his ability to raise Lily alone. The letter hinted at a custody review. Julian's hands shook as he showed it to Ethan. "This is because of me," Julian said, his voice raw. "They think I'm not enough without Ezra." Ethan's stomach dropped. He knew the town's whispers, the way they judged Julian and Ezra's life. "We'll fight this," Ethan said. "Together." Julian looked at him, searching for sincerity, then nodded. Ethan dove into action, researching custody laws and contacting a lawyer friend of Ezra's. The lawyer, Sarah, was blunt. "Small towns like this can be brutal," she said. "You need to prove stability for both of you." Ethan realized this meant more than helping with Lily. It meant rebuilding trust with Julian. He started spending more time at the house, not just for Lily, but to show Julian he was all in. One evening, Lily asked Ethan to tell her a story about Ezra. He hesitated, then shared a memory of them as kids, sneaking out to catch fireflies. "He always let them go," Ethan said, smiling. "Said they deserved to shine." Lily giggled. But Julian, listening quietly, looked away, his eyes wet. Later, he admitted, "I'm scared, Ethan. Losing her would kill me." Ethan met his gaze. "You won't lose her. I'll make sure of it." The community center proposal was approved for a small grant, a victory Ethan shared with Julian and Lily. They celebrated with pizza, Lily drawing a sign that read "Daddy's Place." Ethan hung it on the fridge, a promise to keep fighting. But as they prepared for the custody hearing, Ethan felt the weight of his past. He'd been the one to mock Ezra, to fuel the hate that lingered in Willow Creek. Now, he had to undo it, not just for Lily, but for the brother he'd lost. The custody hearing loomed like a storm cloud over Willow Creek. Ethan felt it in every tense glance from Julian, every quiet moment when Lily clung to them both. He'd promised to fight, but doubt gnawed at him. Could he, with his history of cruelty, really be the stability Lily needed? Julian's fear was palpable. His nights spent pacing, preparing documents with Sarah, the lawyer. Ethan stayed close, cooking dinners, reading to Lily, trying to anchor them both. Sarah warned them the hearing would be tough. The complainant, anonymous, but likely a local, had painted Julian as unfit, citing his grief and financial struggles. Ethan's presence, she said, could help or hurt. "Your blood family," she told him. "That carries weight. But they'll dig into your past too." Ethan nodded, his gut twisting. His years of mocking Ezra weren't a secret in Willow Creek. He'd have to face them head on. Ethan threw himself into the community center project to cope, securing a vacant lot from the town council. He organized a volunteer day, hoping to show the town Lily's family wasn't broken. Mara and other friends of Ezra showed up, painting walls and planting flowers. Lily ran around, supervising with a toy hammer. Even Julian joined, his sleeves rolled up, a rare smile breaking through. The local paper covered it, calling it Ezra's legacy. For the first time, Ethan felt he was building something real. But the town's judgment lingered. At a grocery store, Ethan overheard two women gossiping about Julian. Poor kid. Stuck with him. One said. Ethan's blood boiled. But he thought of Lily and walked away. Later, he told Julian, who just shrugged. That's nothing new, he said. Ezra got worse. Ethan hated how resigned he sounded. Hated that he'd once added to that pain. The night before the hearing, Ethan found Julian in the garage, staring at a photo of him and Ezra, arms around each other, laughing. He'd hate this, Julian said. All this fighting over Lily. Ethan sat beside him, the silence heavy. I'm sorry, Ethan said, the words spilling out. For everything I did to him. To you. Julian didn't respond, but his shoulders softened. Just a fraction. It was enough. The hearing was in a sterile courthouse, the air thick with tension. Julian spoke first, his voice steady but raw, describing his love for Lily, how he and Ezra had fought to build a home for her. Ethan watched, proud and aching. When it was his turn, he stood, heart pounding. I was a terrible brother, he admitted, his voice echoing. I hurt Ezra because I was scared of being different, of losing my place in this town. But he was braver than me. He loved Lily, loved Julian, and I want to honor that by being here for them. The room was silent, the judge's face unreadable. Lily's testimony was simple but shattering. I want to stay with Julian and Uncle Ethan, she said, clutching a drawing of their family. They love me like Daddy did. Ethan's eyes burned, and he saw Julian wipe his face. The judge adjourned, promising a decision soon. Outside, Julian grabbed Ethan's arm. Thank you, he said, voice low. Ethan nodded, unable to speak. Days later, the community center's first event, a fundraiser for queer youth, drew a crowd. Ethan spoke about Ezra, his voice breaking as he shared his brother's dream. Some townsfolk clapped. Others stayed silent. But Lily's smile, bright as she handed out flyers, made it worth it. Julian stood beside Ethan, their shoulders brushing, a quiet alliance forming. The judge's ruling came a week later. Julian retained custody, with Ethan named as co-guardian. Relief flooded them. But Ethan knew it wasn't the end. Willow Creek's whispers wouldn't stop, and the community center faced pushback from a vocal few. But Ethan felt a fire he hadn't known before. He was done hiding, done letting fear win. That night, Ethan and Julian sat on the porch, Lily asleep inside. Ezra would have liked this, Julian said, gesturing to the stars. Ethan nodded, feeling his brother's presence. I'm not him, he said, but I'm trying to be someone he'd be proud of. Julian looked at him, his eyes softer than ever. You're getting there, he said. It wasn't absolution, but it was hope. Summer bloomed in Willow Creek, painting the town in greens and golds. But the victory of the custody ruling didn't erase the scars. Ethan and Julian moved forward, co-guardians of Lily, their lives now intertwined. Lily thrived, her laughter a constant in the house. But Ethan felt the weight of his past with every step. He was rebuilding, But the foundation was shaky, built on years of regret. The community center, now named Ezra's Haven, opened its doors. The first day was small but meaningful: kids painting murals, volunteers setting up a library, Lily proudly cutting the ribbon. Ethan watched, his chest tight with pride. Julian spoke to the crowd, his voice steady as he honored Ezra's dream. "This is for everyone who feels like they don't belong," he said. Ethan clapped hardest, but he noticed the empty seats. Some in Willow Creek still resisted. Pushback came swiftly. A petition circulated, calling Ezra's Haven a bad influence. Ethan recognized names on it, told teammates, neighbors, people he'd once called friends. At a town meeting, Mike, his former teammate, stood up. "This place is pushing an agenda," he said, smirking. Ethan's temper flared, but Julian's hand on his arm stopped him. "Let me," Julian said, standing. "This center is about love and safety. If that scares you, that's your problem." The room split. Some cheered, others jeered. Ethan felt a surge of respect for Julian and shame for his own silence years ago. At home, Lily sensed the tension. "Why are people mad at Daddy's place?" she asked. Ethan knelt, choosing his words carefully. "Some people don't understand yet," he said, "but we'll show them what love looks like." She nodded, trusting him completely, and Ethan vowed to earn it. Julian and Ethan's relationship shifted, softened by shared purpose. One night, after Lily was asleep, they sat in the kitchen, planning the center's next event. Julian laughed at one of Ethan's bad jokes, a sound so rare it startled them both. "Ezra always said you were funny," Julian admitted. Ethan smiled, bittersweet. "I wish I'd listened to him more." Julian met his eyes. "You're listening now." But the past wasn't done with Ethan. An old high school friend, Claire, reached out, apologizing for joining the petition. "I didn't know Ezra," she said. "I just followed the crowd." Ethan forgave her, but it stirred memories of his own cruelty, how he'd led that crowd, mocking Ezra to fit in. He shared this with Julian, expecting judgment. But Julian just listened. "You're not that guy anymore," he said. "Prove it." Ethan did. He spoke at the next town meeting, his voice shaking but clear. "I was wrong about my brother," he said. "I hurt him because I was scared. Ezra's Haven is his legacy, and I'll fight for it." Some faces softened, others didn't. But Ethan felt lighter, like he'd shed a layer of shame. Lily's first day of first grade arrived, and Ethan and Julian took her together, a united front. Parents stared, some with curiosity, others with disdain. Ethan ignored them, focusing on Lily's excited chatter. Afterward, he and Julian grabbed coffee, a rare moment of ease. "We're doing okay, aren't we?" Ethan asked. Julian nodded, a small smile breaking through. "Yeah, we are." The center faced vandalism: a broken window, slurs spray painted on the wall. Ethan and Julian cleaned it up before Lily saw, their hands brushing as they scrubbed. "Ezra dealt with worse," Julian said, his voice tight. Ethan nodded, anger and resolve mixing. They organized a community cleanup, and to their surprise, more people showed up than expected. Claire, Mara, even the principal. It wasn't the whole town, but it was a start. As summer faded, Ethan found another of Ezra's letters, tucked in a book. Ethan, if you're reading this, you're trying. Don't stop. Lily needs you. Julian does too. Ethan cried then. The first time since Ezra's death. He showed the letter to Julian, who read it silently, tears falling. He always knew. Julian whispered. Ethan nodded, vowing to keep trying not just for Lily, but for the family they were becoming. Fall settled over Willow Creek, leaves falling like fragments of the past. Ethan, Julian, and Lily had built a fragile family, bound by love for Ezra and a shared fight for his legacy. Ezra's haven was thriving, a beacon for kids who needed it. But the town's acceptance was uneven. Ethan felt the weight of every step forward, knowing it was built on his brother's courage and his own atonement. One morning, Lily ran to Ethan with a drawing, 3 figures under a rainbow, labeled Uncle E, Daddy J, Daddy E. Ethan's heart swelled, but the image stirred a question he'd avoided. He found Julian in the kitchen, washing dishes. What are we to her? Ethan asked. I'm her uncle. You're her dad. But what are we together? Julian paused, his hands still in the soapy water. Family, he said finally. Messy, complicated family. It wasn't a full answer, but it was enough. The center faced a new challenge. Funding. The initial grant was running dry, and Ethan and Julian scrambled to keep it afloat. They organized a gala, inviting the whole town to show what Ezra's haven meant. Ethan worked tirelessly, hanging lights, booking a local band, even convincing the diner to cater. Julian wrote a speech, his words raw and powerful, honoring Ezra's dream. Lily insisted on helping, making posters with glitter and rainbows. For Daddy, she said, her smile fierce. The gala was a risk. Willow Creek's old guard people like Mike still grumbled, but Ethan and Julian pushed forward. The night arrived, the community center glowing under fairy lights. Townsfolk filled the room, some supportive, others curious. Julian spoke first, his voice steady. Ezra believed everyone deserved a place to belong. He said, "This is his gift to us." Ethan followed, sharing a memory of Ezra teaching him to stargaze. He showed me how to see the light. He said, "I'm still learning." The crowd applauded, some with tears, others with tight smiles. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Afterward, Claire approached Ethan, her eyes soft. "I get it now," she said. "What you're doing he writes good." Ethan nodded, grateful but weary. Change was slow, but it was happening. Lily danced with Julian, her laughter cutting through the noise. And Ethan felt a peace he hadn't known possible. Weeks later, a letter arrived from the foundation, approving a new grant. Ezra's haven would survive another year. Ethan and Julian celebrated quietly, splitting a beer on the porch. "We did it," Ethan said. Julian nodded, his gaze distant. "He'd be proud," he said. "Of both of us." Ethan felt the words settle deep, a balm on old wounds. But the past wasn't done. Mike and a few others tried to rally against the center, spreading flyers calling it divisive. Ethan confronted him at the bar, his voice calm but firm. "You don't have to understand it," he said, "but you don't get to tear it down." Mike backed off, muttering, But Ethan saw fear in his eyes, fear of change. For the first time, Ethan felt stronger than that fear. Lily's 7th birthday approached, and Ethan and Julian planned a quiet celebration. They took her to the coast, a place Ezra loved. As Lily splashed in the waves, Ethan and Julian sat on the sand, watching her. "I was wrong about you," Julian said suddenly. "I thought you'd run when it got hard." "You didn't." Ethan swallowed, his voice low. "I ran from Ezra. I won't run from her." "Were you?" Julian's hand brushed his. A fleeting touch, but it carried years of grief and hope. That night, under the stars, Ethan felt Ezra's presence not in guilt, but in love. He looked at Lily, asleep in Julian's arms, and knew this was his purpose. He'd mocked his brother, lost him, but found a family in his absence. Ezra's haven wasn't just a building. It was a promisito Lily. To Julian. To every kid who needed a home. Ethan would keep that promise. Not to erase the past, but to build a future worthy of his brother's heart.